What's going on, hustlers? Back at you guys with another video. Today, I'm going to be breaking down all the terms and acronyms, or not all of them, but I'm going to be breaking down the 20 most common terms and acronyms that people ask me about, or people send me emails or DMs about, or LinkedIn messages about. Now, I am going to be breaking these down in this video. However, I do have a free PDF that breaks down a whole bunch of other ones that I am sending to all of you guys. The only way you can get it though is if you DM me on Instagram, and you have to be following me for a response. So if you do want a PDF breaking down some additional acronyms that's for free, just hit me on Instagram, shoot me a DM, and then I will get that sent over to you guys. So for this video, let's get to 100 likes. We need 100 likes for this video. And make sure you guys are clicking that subscribe button. Our goal is to get to 5,000 subscribers. So let's rip it. Without further ado, let's get into it. GovCon terms and acronyms explained. All right, number one, POC. So I'm black. I am a black man, but this does not mean person of color. This means point of contact. So you're going to have a POC when you're bidding on something and it's in the solicitation phase, and then you're going to have a POC when it becomes an award, and then you're even going to have a POC when you submit a PAR, which is a post-award request, which we're going to break down later on in the video. The next one, PO. So PO could be procurement officer, right? Now, procurement officers, they do not have the ability to buy anything. I learned that teaching at a seminar a couple of weeks ago. Procurement officers, all they do is they evaluate your bids and then send it to the contracting officers that actually have the buying power. So that's the first iteration of PO. The second one is PO as in purchase order. So in DLA, once a contract becomes awarded to you, it is now a purchase order because the government is saying, hey, we will purchase this from you. So then it becomes a purchase order. Number two, PPI, and that is the producer price index, and that is used from a seller's perspective to measure the change in price of production. So the producer price index is going to be something that you're going to reference if, let's say, you're selling like these same inverters over and over, right, over the course of like 5 years, and then the cost of selling those inverters changes. You are then going to look at the producer price index for those inverters and determine what that change is. SAM is a very common one, but I don't think a lot of people know what it means. So SAM is actually the System for Award Management. So I just want to clarify that. System for Award Management. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe it used to be FedBizOps, which is what's seen in War Dogs. Now, if it wasn't FedBizOps, I know that FedBizOps is not currently going under that name. I'm pretty sure it's SAM, but whatever website they were using in War Dogs is no longer underneath that name, and it's been consolidated. And if I'm not mistaken, they started making that change in like 2019 or 2020. So SAM is actually fairly recent. DFAR, Defense Federal Acquisition Regulations. So there's the FARs, the Federal Acquisition Regulations, and then I know I have a couple of people shot me DMs that are also aviators as well. These are a different kind of FARs than the ones that we deal with. The Federal Aviation Regulations, these are Federal Acquisition Regulations. So these discuss all of the rules that you have to be in compliance with when you're selling things to the government. And they also establish a whole bunch of different parameters for different things, whether that be, what country you're getting something from, or how much of the work that you can subcontract out to somebody, or, the scope of performance on certain kinds of contracts. So DFARS are Defense Federal Acquisition Regulations. I don't even know what number this is. We're just going to rip it. FSC, so Federal Supply Class. So FSC is the Federal Supply Class Code. So these are FSC codes, and these are how the government identifies things. So there's PSC, which is Product Service Codes, and Federal Supply Codes. I don't know the difference off the top of my head. However, that is something that I have been looking. I've been trying to find out. I can't find any like actual definitive difference between them. If somebody finds that out and comments down below, I don't know what I'm going to do, but if somebody comments down below and like you can give me like a definitive answer, and you shoot me a DM on Instagram saying, "Hey, I commented on your video," I'll freaking FaceTime you for 10 minutes, and you can ask me whatever questions you want, because this is a very like nagging thing that I want to figure out, and I just can't seem to get any information on it. So whoever comments down below the actual difference between these, shoot me a DM on Instagram, send me a screenshot of you commenting. We will literally hop on a 10-minute Instagram video. You can ask me whatever questions you want because you're solving a problem for me. The next one, IDIQ, so indefinite delivery, indefinite quantity contract. So an IDIQ is the same thing as an IDC. Now, I am going to a boot camp to learn more about this actually next month. And there's actually different kinds of IDIQs. However, they all operate on the same premise. So the government issues a PO, right? Or DLA, let's just keep things simple. DLA issues a PO, right? And then they say, okay, over the duration of, let's just say 1 year, keep things easy, 250,000, right? So they're essentially going to say, hey, when we issue this contract, we're going to spend a minimum of, I don't know, $47,000, right? That's the minimum we're going to spend on this contract. Over the duration of this year, we could spend a whole bunch more, up to 250,000. So it's indefinite delivery. You don't know when the purchase orders are going to come. They just give it to you, and then they're like, hey, listen, we might want these orders next week. We might want these orders in 10 months. You really don't know. And then it's indefinite quantity. So they can order as much as they like up to a certain number. So they can be fun, and they can also be not so fun if depending on when you get them. Like if you get them in over the duration of like the change of a calendar year, the government's fiscal year, and the price of things goes up, it can be nasty. But if you get them early on in the year, they're quite fun. It's kind of just like recurring revenue, so they're a good deal. MOQ. So you're never going to see this in solicitations. However, I guarantee you it's going to come up when you're dealing with a vendor of some sort. So an MOQ is a minimum order quantity. So anybody who's ever worked in like clothing or anything like that, or worked with any kind of like branding or marketing or something like that, and you've made like water bottles or keychains, you know all about MOQs. I had to deal with them when I was the merchandising director for my school's magazine. So typically what they mean, or not typically, they always mean that manufacturers will not just make one of something, because the cost of the machines, the cost of the labor, the cost of the overhead to run the building, all that good stuff, it's so high that it's not worth their time to make one. So for it to be worth their time, let's just say, wow, that is not cool. The cap for my gallon is just like covered in these little ants. Can you guys see that? Anyways, I just got distracted. But what MOQs mean is manufacturers will say you have to order, like, let's say 50 pens, right? You can't just order one pen, because the cost of overhead, like the opportunity cost that they take on to make just one pen, is so high. They're foregoing the opportunity to make other things, and they're spending their time on this. So they're literally losing money by just making the one pen that they're like, okay, if you want one pen, you got to order at least 50. So that way it's at least worth our time. So you see this a lot with smaller things like screws, pants, outlets, fuses, anything that tends to be higher quantity and then really small in terms of dimensions can have an MOQ. So you want to be conscious of that, especially when you're pricing your contracts, because let's say there's an MOQ for 100 screws, but DLA only wants 50. You actually have to price the cost of that 50 into your 10 screws, or else you're going to be really upside down and in the red. Now, there's actually a little box when you submit your bids in DIBS that says, hey, is there a larger quantity available at no additional cost? So DLA is aware that MOQs take place, and you can actually tell DLA, hey, this is an MOQ. And I'll give you, in the example that we just talked about, the additional 40 at no additional cost, because you priced the 10 that DLA was initially asking for at 50 units. So once we get to 5,000 subscribers, I will make a video. I'll make a video about how to submit in DIBS, and I'll show you guys all about that. PAR, so post award request. So a lot of people don't know this, but after you win a contract, let's say something changes, right? Let's say the initial vendor you were getting it from went out of stock. Let's say they ran out of stock, and then you have to get the material from a different approved source. If you want to change the source that you're providing the material from, you can just submit a PAR, which is a post award request, and you can tell DLA, hey, I need an extension, or hey, I want to give you a different part, or I want to give you the same part from a different company, or I want to give you an alternate or something like that. Like post award requests are pretty flexible in terms of like what they cover. However, that doesn't always mean that they're going to get approved. So you have to wait for DLA to approve them to proceed with giving them something different than what they asked for on the contract, or else you're going to get dinged. But as I mentioned before, you also have POCs, points of contacts, on the PARs that you submit. SDVOSB, service disabled veteran owned small business. So now keep in mind that as of last year, if you are an SDVOSB, to be eligible to get the benefits of bidding on those kinds of contracts that are set aside for you guys, you do now have to get registered with the SBA, which is really, really sad, really unfortunate, because my dad and we were talking about this yesterday. And I think a lot of companies are going to get wiped out just because a lot of companies solely depend on SDVOSB set-asides or women-owned set-asides or hub-zone set-asides. All of those now you have to go through the SBA. You can't self-certify. And companies work on that, and sometimes they just don't have the finances to pay somebody to do it, or they can't do it themselves because they don't have the time. So unfortunately, yeah, I think we're going to see like kind of a decline in some of the companies that rely entirely on these, which is really sad because the veteran owned and the SDVOSB ones, like those people already paid the price. They already served our country, right? Like if you have your military ID, I believe that you should have a leg up on all the competition when you're doing business with the government. I think we don't take good enough care of our troops once they come back stateside, which is a really, really unfortunate thing. But that's just the way the cookie crumbles. The government's really been cracking down on a lot of like fraud and people that have kind of been taking advantage of the self-certifying thing. That kind of ruined it for everybody else. PI, Procurement Integrated Electronic Enterprise. So this is the website that you're going to go to. So that way you can invoice the government. Now, the next acronym is going to explain where in PI you go to. So PI is like the website. You can look it up. You can go to PI. And then WAF is a section within PI where you go to tell the government, hey, I shipped this to you and I'm looking to invoice it. WAF is Wide Area Workflow. So that's PI is like the big website, and then WAF is like a section within PI that allows you to get paid. Then a BPA, which is a blanket purchase agreement. Now, there's a whole bunch of information floating around on blanket purchase agreements. I want to give you guys the official exact definition. So a BPA is a simplified method of filling anticipated repetitive needs from open market supplies and services below the simplified acquisition threshold. Now, that's from a website that I really like. However, I want to give you guys like the official definition from acquisition.gov. Oh, okay. They literally just copy and pasted it. So it's an ordering activity that allows any scheduled contract to fill repetitive needs for supplies or services. And then ordering activities shall establish the blanket purchasing agreement with the scheduled contractors that can provide the supplier service that represents the best value. In addition to price, when determining best value, the ordering activity may consider, among other factors, past performance, trading considerations, life of the item, so if it has a shelf life, warranty considerations, maintenance availability, environmental and energy efficiency considerations, and delivery terms. So that is directly from acquisition.gov. I wanted to give you guys that straight from the horse's mouth because there's a lot of like misconstrued information, and people like summarize things and they'll just give you the synopsis. But with the government, like the vernacular that they use is very important. So it's very good to be specific. So that's straight from acquisition.gov. CMMC, Cybersecurity Maturity Model Compliance. So this has to do with essentially how secure your internal systems are when you're storing information about the government. So I actually talk about this. In day one of Ignore to Award. So if you don't feel like going and reading all the documentation about this, you can just register for that. However, CMMC, it really refers to CDI and CUI. So CUI is classified uncontrolled information, or controlled unclassified information, and CDI is controlled defense information. And it's very convoluted. It's a very new thing. It was only established in 2022, and it's not going to be required to take effect until 2026. However, I would say get on it now. Start figuring out who you're going to get to do your CMMC for 2026. I'm working with a company now, trying to figure out a way to reduce the cost. Unfortunately, CMMC level 2 compliance is about $100,000 to get. However, CMMC level 1, which is like entry level, most of the contracts that you guys will do is going to be CMC level 1. You're going to be able to do that self-certified. However, once you start to get to like bigger ticket stuff or stuff with tech docs, you're going to need level 2 compliance. I'm working on it, guys. I'm working on it. Sometime by the end of this year, I will have figured out a way to make it a lot cheaper. My dad is working with this other company. I'm talking to this guy that's coming up with a software. However, I'll give you guys straight from the DoD cybersecurityinformation.gov. So it says CMMC is aligned to the DoD's information security requirements for the defense industrial base partners. It's designed to enforce protection of sensitive unclassified information that is shared by the department with its contractors and subcontractors. The program provides the department increased assurance that contractors and subcontractors are meeting the cybersecurity requirements that apply to acquisition programs and systems that process controlled unclassified information. So I know that's not like super clear to you guys. I break it down super in depth. I talk about it for like an hour in day one of Ignore to Award. So if you don't have any interest in reading these documents and piecing it together yourself, we'll help you out with that. But CMMC, Cybersecurity Maturity Model Compliance, there's 3 tiers: level 1, level 2, level 3. Level 3 is like Lockheed Martin, like you are making like B-2 bombers and stuff. And that plane is actually really old. I don't even think they're still making that. But level 2, that's where you start to get with like some more high level stuff. Stuff is getting manufactured. The end use application is like the F-22 or the F-35, or like the C-130. Like you're dealing with some stuff that has some crazy end uses. And then level 1 is just an annual self assessment, self certification. That's going to be like probably 70 to 80% of the contracts that startups are going to deal with. So not too big of a deal now, but January 1st 2026 it is going to be mandatory. So you guys are going to want to start doing some research on that. GSA, so General Services Administration. So this is funny because I worked with a company and they were like, oh, do we need to get on a GSA schedule so that way we can get contracts? And what was funny was at the time I was like, I don't even know what the hell GSA stands for. Everybody talks about it, but you don't need to be on one. You don't even need to be familiarized with it to do business with DLA, which I like. The GSA is the General Services Administration, and they manage federal property and provide contracting options for government agencies. So the GSA is independent of the Department of Defense. And essentially they have like their own set of schedules that if you can get on them, then when the government needs something, they'll call you and they'll go off the GSA schedule and then place the order with you. You don't need to be on a GSA schedule. You don't even need to understand what the GSA is to do business with DLA, which is what I like. I went 2.5 years without understanding a lick of information about the General Services Administration. So if I went through it, then you guys can get through it as well. NAICS, North American Industry Classification Standard. So I talked about this in the video where I talked about how to go from $0 to $100,000. Everybody likes to use NAICS codes as a buzzword. Like it just sounds nice because that's what everybody knows. Everybody's familiar with it, right? And it's like, okay, if you understand NAICS codes, you have more information about government contracting than the average person, but you don't understand enough to actually go and do anything with it and make tangible dollars. So NAICS codes are essentially the way that the government classifies different kinds of like services, whether it be like distribution or manufacturing. But you don't want to be searching by NAICS codes. You want to be searching by FSSE codes, which we talked about prior. Those are going to be specific. So NAICS codes are like the broad way that the government classifies items, and it's like a funnel. So NAICS codes is at the top. Then FSC codes is underneath that. Federal Supply Class Codes, or PSC, Product Service Codes, are underneath that. Each NAICS code will have like 3 to 5 FSC codes underneath. So you're going to be able to get way more specific when you search by FSC code. And then underneath the FSC codes, then you have your NSNs. And for anybody who's ever looked at an NSN, they know that the first 4 digits of every NSN are an FSC code because all the items are classified. And we actually have a breakdown sheet in Ignore to Award, like in our informational documents, that breaks down exactly what every single number of the NSN means. So if you're ever looking at that number and you're like, I don't understand how to interpret this, just hit us up. We'll get you registered for Ignore to Award and we'll break that down for you. UEI, Unique Entity Identifier number. So your UEI number. So the government's no longer using a DNB number, Duns and Bradstreet number. Now they have switched to UEI, which I believe they did in 2020 or 2021. I think it was 2021. And your UEI is your Unique Entity Identifier number, not to be confused with a cage code. So this essentially just replaces your Duns and Bradstreet number, if you will. And I think it's just streamlined. I don't know exactly why they did it. It's kind of like it's essentially like an EIN, but for doing business with the government. It's like a tax ID number, but specifically for doing business with the government. And it's actually used to identify like which businesses are eligible for like federal grants, awards, and contracts. So this was a big one during 2020 when people were doing like those SBA loans and they were getting like hella money from the SBA. This would be what that would be used for, is like identifying if you're eligible for different grants or awards or things like that. Lot testing. Okay, so this is one of the things that we talk about in what to search for in solicitations. So if you go back and you watch my video, how to read a solicitation for beginners, I show you guys a whole bunch of the stuff that you want to avoid. But lot testing is one of those things, and all lot testing is the manufacturer is required to just take like a random sample of the material that they made, like from a random lot, and then conduct test reports to ensure that those random samples are meeting the requirements of the contract or the requirements of the blueprints that were set forth for that product. So think about like how Boeing got caught with the doors, right? With their bad safety practices. There was not lot testing being done internally. Externally, the FAA had to come and then just do random lot tests and then pick stuff off the line and then be like, this is not up to standard. So lot testing is basically when a vendor just takes random samples from whatever they just manufactured and then they're putting it through tests to ensure that it's meeting the requirements. The next one is ISO. So ISO is a quality. There's ISO 9001. There's a couple different ISOs actually. And then there's some that are like for aviation, some that are for like land vehicles, some that are for marine vehicles. But ISO just stands for International. It's funny because the acronym it doesn't work well, but ISO is the International Standard for Organization. Really, it's International Organization for Standardization, but I think it's international. I prefer International Standards for Organization, and that basically is they're a company that will give you a certification stating that you have quality assurance procedures and standard operating procedures, and making sure that you're just doing things ethically, making sure that you're doing things the right way, and the quality of what's coming in and out of your doors is being regulated. Let's see. Do I have anything else? I do not. All right. So that was 20 acronyms that you will see in the government contracting space. I broke those down for you guys. If you have any questions about this, shoot me a DM on Instagram. You must be following me for a response. If you're looking for some coaching or consulting, head to my website, which is going to be linked on the bottom of this video. And then if you guys want that additional acronym breakdown sheet, please just shoot me a DM on Instagram. For that, let's get to 5,000 subscribers. Let's get 100 likes on this video. Thank you guys so much for tuning in all the way to the end. And not only am I looking forward to your success, but I'm sure of it. Have a good one, hustlers.